Welcome back to our journey through the history of bourbon. This is the 6th episode in our 30-part series, and today we're diving into a truly pivotal era. In our previous episodes, we laid the groundwork, exploring the earliest days of American whiskey. We talked about the first settlers bringing their distilling knowledge from Europe. We traced the origins of corn whiskey. We covered the very first steps taken in the wilds of early America. Now, we move forward in time to witness the birth of bourbon as we know it. This episode is a crucial link, connecting the rustic past to the refined spirit. That spirit would one day conquer the world. To understand how bourbon became bourbon, we follow a clear timeline. Our approach is what I call timeline trust. We trust the dates. We trust the facts. We trust the historical records to tell the story. This isn't just about legends and myths, though they add color to the tale. It's about the step-by-step progression of an industry. Look at key moments in order and you see how one innovation led to the next. A legal change in one decade could spark a boom in the next. This method shows the cause and effect that shaped this American spirit. Our focus now, mid-1800s to early 1900s. A time of immense change and huge growth. It was an era of innovators, entrepreneurs, and yes, a few scoundrels. We'll see legendary figures whose names are still on the bottles we drink. We'll watch small farm stills evolve into large commercial operations with familiar brand names. This period is often called the Golden Age of Bourbon, a time when the rules were written, the standards were set, and the foundations for a global phenomenon were laid. Get ready for a deep dive into the heart of bourbon history. We'll cover a lot of ground and a lot of time. Prepare for a dense 15 minutes filled with dates and fascinating facts. We'll introduce key people, visit historic distillery sites, and uncover the events that transformed a farmer's drink into America's native spirit. By the end, you'll clearly understand the crucial developments of this formative period. It's complex, but essential for any true bourbon enthusiast. Let's set the stage for what you can expect today. Our journey begins in the mid-19th century, a time when the United States was expanding, and so was its thirst for whiskey. We will look at the people who saw the potential in this spirit. These were not just farmers anymore. They were businessmen, chemists, marketers. We will meet figures like Oscar Pepper, Dr. James Crowe, E.H. Taylor Jr. These individuals didn't just make whiskey, they built dynasties and created legacies. As we move through the decades, you will see how the industry itself began to mature. We will chart the growth of distillery clusters in places like Bardstown, Lexington. These towns became the epicenters of bourbon production, the Silicon Valley of their day for whiskey making. We will discuss the founding of distilleries whose names echo through history, founding dates, early operations, family stories, and communities around their stills. Of course, making the whiskey is only half the story. You also have to get it to the people who want to drink it. A huge part of bourbon's growth was tied to transportation. We'll explore the critical role that the Ohio River, the Mississippi River, played in shipping barrels to markets like New Orleans. Then, the transformative impact of the railroad. The expansion of rail lines opened up new markets and allowed for faster, more reliable distribution. This logistical revolution was as important as changes in recipe or distillation in making bourbon a national drink. Finally, we'll examine how the industry began to police itself. As bourbon grew popular, it attracted counterfeiters and rectifiers selling cheap, sometimes dangerous imitations. Honest distillers banded together to demand government regulation. This movement culminated in the National Bottled and Bond Act of 1897. We will break down what this act meant for producers and consumers. It was a landmark law guaranteeing authenticity and quality, a standard still influencing the industry today. Table of Contents, Part 2, Act 1. Section 1, From Farm Stills to Frontier Spirit. Section 2, The Legend of Elijah Craig. Section 3, The Chivoli and Boone County Pioneers. Section 4, The Naming of a Native Spirit. To truly understand the story of bourbon, we must go back before the name existed. Our timeline begins in the late 1700s, a time of westward expansion. Settlers from Scotland, settlers from Ireland, Settlers from Germany crossed the Appalachian Mountains into untamed wilderness. They were tough, resourceful people. They brought distilling traditions from Europe. In Europe, they made whiskey from barley and rye. In this new land, they found corn growing in abundance. This golden grain became the foundation of a new American whiskey. Distilling was a practical part of farm life, not a business. Farmers had surplus corn, corn was hard to transport, and corn would spoil. Turning corn into whiskey solved those problems. Whiskey was easier to ship, it didn't spoil, and it was valuable for trade. Farmers used whiskey as currency to buy goods or pay debts. Early farm stills were small and simple, often a single copper pot still operated by the farmer and his family. The spirit was usually unaged, clear, and potent. It was called corn whiskey. The process was straightforward but required skill. Farmers mashed their corn, fermented it into a beer-like liquid, then distilled it. It wasn't refined by today's standards. The whiskey was often harsh and fiery, meant for warmth and fortitude, not subtlety. There was no aging in charred oak barrels yet. The spirit was consumed locally, shared with neighbors, or sold to travelers passing through. This was the primordial soup from which bourbon would emerge. This era laid the essential groundwork for everything that followed. Kentucky became a center for whiskey. Fertile cornlands and limestone filtered water ideal for fermentation. Distilling became part of the region's identity. Nearly every farm had a still, and knowledge passed from generation to generation. These anonymous distillers were the true pioneers. They adapted old-world skills to new ingredients, creating the first chapter of American whiskey history. As we move our timeline forward to the year 1789, we encounter one of the most famous names in bourbon lore, Elijah Craig. The story of Elijah Craig is a perfect example of how legend and fact intertwine in bourbon history. Craig was a Baptist preacher, an educator, and a prominent businessman in early Kentucky. He founded towns and started enterprises, a fulling mill, a paper mill, a rope walk. He was also, by all accounts, a distiller. He operated a distillery in what was then Fayette County, now Scott County, near the town of Georgetown. He was one of many people making whiskey in Kentucky at the time. The legend elevates him. The popular tale credits him as the father of bourbon, the first to age whiskey in charred oak barrels. The story goes, he had a fire in his barn where barrels were stored. Some barrels were charred inside but still usable. Not wanting to waste them, Craig filled them with corn whiskey. He shipped the barrels downriver to New Orleans. During the long journey, something magical happened. The whiskey transformed. A beautiful reddish color, a smoother texture, new, complex flavors of caramel, vanilla. When it arrived in New Orleans, drinkers were amazed. It was unlike any corn whiskey they'd tasted. They asked for more of that red liquor from Bourbon County. The tale neatly explains bourbon's key characteristic, aging in charred oak. For decades, the story was accepted and promoted by Heaven Hill, makers of the Elijah Craig brand. However, modern historians have cast doubt on the legend. Elijah Craig was real, but there's no concrete 18th century evidence he was first to char barrels. Charring was known in other industries to purify and preserve contents. More likely, charred barrel aging evolved gradually, adopted by many distillers. Regardless, the legend endures as a powerful founding myth for bourbon. Section 3. The Chivoli and Boone County Pioneers. While the legend of Elijah Craig often steals the spotlight, the true story of bourbon's origins is more complex and involves many other key figures. As we move into the early 1800s, we see clusters of distilleries emerging in specific areas of Kentucky. One of the most important early hubs was the area around Louisville, particularly in what was then part of Jefferson County. A group of families, many of them German immigrants, settled along the Salt River. These families, with names like Chivoli, Beam, and Medley, brought with them a deep knowledge of distilling and a strong work ethic, establishing a whiskey-making dynasty that continues to this day. The Chivoli family, for whom the modern-day Louisville suburb is named, were among the most prominent of these early distillers. Christian Chivoli and his sons built a distillery that became a cornerstone of the local economy. They were not just farmers making a little extra whiskey on the side. They were commercial distillers focused on producing whiskey for a wider market. They were joined by families like the Beams. Jacob Beam, born in 1760, sold his first barrel of whiskey, called Old Jake Beam, in 1795. He and his descendants would go on to create one of the most famous names in the entire world of whiskey, a legacy built on the foundations laid in these early Kentucky settlements. Another crucial area in these early days was Boone County in the northern part of Kentucky. This region, situated right on the Ohio River, was perfectly positioned for shipping. The distillers of Boone County, such as William Snyder and a man named John Leathers, were known for producing high-quality whiskey. In fact, many historians believe that the Boone County distillers were among the first to consistently produce and market a superior corn whiskey that was aged and had a distinct character. Their proximity to the river gave them a significant advantage, allowing them to send their products to markets downriver in Cincinnati and beyond, building a reputation for Kentucky whiskey. These early pioneers in places like Jefferson and Boone counties were the true innovators. They were the ones who were experimenting with mash bills, introducing rye and barley to complement the corn. They were the ones who learned that aging the whiskey in wood improved its taste, even if the widespread use of new, charred oak was still in the future. They built the first dedicated commercial distilleries and established the trade routes that would carry their product to a thirsty nation. They were less famous than the legendary Elijah Craig, but their collective contribution was arguably far more important in transforming corn whiskey from a local farm product into a viable commercial spirit. Section 4. The naming of a native spirit. One of the great mysteries, how it got the name bourbon. Like the charred barrel story, there's no single answer. Several competing theories, each likely holding part of the truth. The name didn't appear overnight. Branding and regional ID built it. For decades, it was simply called Western whiskey, Kentucky whiskey. Certain Kentucky whiskeys earned a reputation for superior quality, so a more specific name was needed. Most accepted theory: Bourbon County, Kentucky. Late 1700s, early 1800s. Bourbon County was vast, covering northeastern Kentucky. It was a major shipping port for goods. Whiskey was sent down the Ohio River and the Mississippi River. Barrels were stamped Bourbon County to show origin. That aged, corn-based whiskey hit New Orleans and caused a sensation. People asked for the whiskey from Bourbon, and the place name became the product name. Another theory: the Bourbon dynasty of France. The French allied with American colonists in the Revolutionary War. As gratitude, places were named for the French royal family, including Bourbon County and Bourbon Street. Naming the whiskey Bourbon could honor the French and add refinement. A marketing move: link frontier whiskey to royalty. Third theory: Bourbon Street itself. New Orleans was the main market where tastes were set. Taverns and saloons on Bourbon Street served aged corn whiskey from upriver. Patrons may have called the drink by the street's name. Most likely, a mix of all three. Shipping point of Bourbon County, reinforced by the French connection, and cemented in the bars of Bourbon Street. Section 1. The rise of the distillery towns. As America entered the 19th century, the scattered farm stills of the frontier gave way to centralized commercial operations. The period from the 1820s to the 1830s marked a significant shift. Specific towns in Kentucky emerged as epicenters of bourbon production: Bardstown, Lexington. They had abundant corn and pure limestone-filtered water from local springs and aquifers. A growing population of skilled distillers turned craft into industry. Bardstown became a distilling hotbed on the stagecoach route between Louisville and Nashville. Families like the Beams and the Medleys began scaling up operations. They built larger distilleries, hired more workers, and produced whiskey in quantities beyond local needs. Distillery buildings and warehouses dotted the countryside, creating a collaborative environment and improving quality. Lexington also became a key player. The fertile bluegrass lands were ideal for grain. Entrepreneurs invested in sophisticated distilleries and began focusing on branding, marketing, and creating a consistent product. Growth from 1820 to 1840 was foundational. This established the geographical heart of the bourbon industry in central Kentucky. Clustering created economies of scale and fostered innovation. No longer just individual farmers making whiskey, it was the birth of a regional industry. Many of today's famous distilleries trace their roots to this period, where natural resources and ambition set the stage for bourbon's golden age. Section 2. Science Meets Spirit, Dr. Crowe and Oscar Pepper. The mid-19th century saw one of the most important advancements in bourbon. It didn't come from a traditional distiller, but from a man of science, Dr. James C. Crowe, a Scottish immigrant with training in medicine and chemistry. He was hired in 1838 by distiller Oscar Pepper, who operated near Versailles on the site of what is now Woodford Reserve. Pepper wanted the best, most consistent whiskey. By hiring Dr. Crowe, he brought scientific rigor, measurements, instruments, and the scientific method into the distillery. He systematically measured mash temperature and proof. His key contribution was perfecting the sour mash process, adding a specific amount of acidic spent mash to control pH. That control ensured a consistent environment for yeast, killed foreign bacteria, and produced a far more reliable product. Before Crowe, quality varied wildly. After Crowe, distillers achieved dependable flavor batch after batch. His whiskey at the Oscar Pepper distillery became famous as Crowe, later Old Crowe, and was a favorite of politicians and generals, including Ulysses S. Grant. The Pepper-Crowe partnership marked the shift from folk art to industrial bourbon making. Pepper's capital and vision paired with Crowe's technical genius. Crowe's methods, especially sour mash, became industry standard. They're still used by nearly every bourbon distillery today, a testament to Crowe's lasting impact at the Oscar Pepper Distillery. Section 3. The Birth of a Bourbon Baron, E. H. Taylor, Jr. As the industry matured, leaders emerged who were visionaries, businessmen, and fierce quality advocates. No one embodied this better than Colonel Edmund Haynes Taylor, Jr. Born in 1830 in Columbus, Kentucky, and grandnephew of President Zachary Taylor, he was a banker who entered the whiskey business by financing distillers. In 1869, Taylor purchased a struggling distillery near Frankfort and named it the OFC Distillery, Old Fire Copper, planning to install state-of-the-art copper stills and realizing a grand vision. He wanted a showplace, a bourbon castle reflecting premium quality, and invested in new technology like steam heating for warehouses, a revolutionary idea for better aging control. Taylor mastered marketing and branding, selling bourbon under his name using his signature as a guarantee, standing out when many barrels were sold anonymously. He was a tireless crusader for quality, appalled by rectifiers who adulterated spirits. Taylor fought these frauds, seeing them as a threat to the industry and defining his career. He believed the only way to protect consumers and true Kentucky bourbon was through government regulation. Taylor lobbied relentlessly for what became the Bottled in Bond Act of 1897. E. H. Taylor, Jr. was more than a distiller. He was the primary architect of bourbon's modern identity. Section 1. A Legacy Forged in Fire and Law. As we bring this chapter of our timeline to a close, it is clear that the period from the mid-1800s to the early 1900s was nothing short of transformative for bourbon. We have journeyed from the rustic farm stills of the Kentucky frontier to the grand industrial bourbon castles that defined the Golden Age. We witnessed the spirit evolve from a simple, unaged corn whiskey into a complex, refined product with a protected identity. This era was defined by a relentless drive for improvement and legitimacy. It was a time when the random chance of a charred barrel gave way to the deliberate science of maturation, and when the anonymous barrel of Western whiskey was replaced by branded bottles bearing the signatures of the men who made them. The foundations of modern bourbon were not just laid during this period, they were carved into stone. The most profound changes came from the interplay between people and progress. Visionary figures like Dr. James C. Crowe introduced scientific precision, transforming the art of distilling into a repeatable, consistent process with his perfection of the sour mash method. Entrepreneurs like Oscar Pepper provided the capital and ambition to push the boundaries of what a distillery could be. And then there were the bourbon barons, men like Colonel E. H. Taylor, Jr., who were not only master distillers and marketers, but also fierce political advocates. They understood that to secure the future of their spirit, they had to define it, protect it from counterfeiters, and elevate its status in the eyes of the public. Their efforts were not just about business. They were about creating a lasting legacy for America's native spirit. The era's greatest single achievement was arguably the creation of a legal identity for bourbon. The fight for authenticity against the rectifiers, led by distillers who risked their fortunes on the principle of quality, was a pivotal battle. The culmination of this struggle, the Bottled in Bond Act of 1897, stands as a monumental piece of legislation. It was more than just a law. It was a declaration of what bourbon should be. In summarizing this critical period, we must acknowledge the dramatic and tragic conclusion brought on by Prohibition. Just as the bourbon industry reached its absolute peak, having established its quality, built national brands, consolidated into a powerful economic force, it was brought to a complete standstill. The passage of the 18th Amendment in 1919 and the start of national prohibition in 1920 represent one of the most significant turning points in American history. And for the bourbon industry, it was a near-fatal blow. The legacy of this era is therefore a dual one. On one hand, it is a story of incredible success, innovation, the establishment of an iconic American product. On the other hand, it is a cautionary tale of how quickly a thriving industry can be brought to its knees by the shifting tides of social and political movements. The long, dark shadow of Prohibition looms over the end of this golden age. The 13 years that followed would test the resilience of the spirit and the few who were allowed to continue making it. The story, of course, does not end here. The next episode in our series will delve into this fascinating and often overlooked period. We have covered a tremendous amount of ground today, from the scientific breakthroughs of Dr. Crow to the legislative triumphs of E. H. Taylor, Jr. Thank you for joining me on this journey through bourbon's golden age. If you found this history as fascinating as I do, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel so you do not miss Episode 7, The Medicinal Whiskey Lifeline.